Hello, my name is Nicki Truesdale, and today I'd like to talk about the subject of homeschooling, high school, and graduating early. My third child, which is my first son, graduated from a lifetime of homeschooling this year at the age of 16. And when I've shared about that, I've received quite a few questions on how in the world is this possible, and did he get all of his credits and things like that. And so I want to try to help you understand how we did it, and you can see if this applies to your family. A quick introduction. My name is Nicki Truesdale, and I'm the author of Anyone Can Homeschool. And I've been a blogger for about 12 years at nikkitruesdale.com, where I talk about home education and Christian parenting, and I also have a lot of book lists and recommendations. And so, on the topic of high school, the first thing I want to say that I always say is high school at home is really important. If you've already been homeschooling and you're thinking maybe your child should go back to public school for different opportunities, I would really ask you to reconsider that, because there are so many benefits to high school at home. And secondly, I don't want you to be afraid of high school. It's not as scary as it sounds. It's just building on what they've already been learning. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to teach any high school subject. And so the third thing that you need to understand is it does not take 12 years to educate a child. This is a concept that's very foreign to us because we are used to the K-12 system, in which you put your kid in kindergarten and 13 years later they come out educated, or so we're told. But I've written a blog post about this, and I will link it in the comments. And what I want people to understand is that the system we have now is relatively new, and it is a government bureaucracy. So those two things right there should tell you that it's not the only way. Public school K-12 is one system, and it's not necessarily the best. And so if you can let go of the K-12 public school classroom mindset, then everything else I'm about to tell you will make more sense. And so I really encourage you to read that piece on how it doesn't take 12 years to educate a child. And the actual title of that post is The History of Education in America. But if you just think, any little snippet of history that you know about the United States, you'll see that the public school classroom came about as we know it, in the early 20th century. But before that, we had people founding a nation, writing a constitution, inventing amazing things that have advanced civilization by leaps and bounds, and all without a standardized public education. Education before the car was invented and the airplane was invented, all of these things were invented by people who had sporadic different kinds of education, a little bit here, a little bit there, some at home, some in a one-room schoolhouse, some at an actual institution. Some people went to college for a further education, and some didn't. What they all had in common was a basic set of principles on what education actually is and what a person, not a child, but a person needs to know. And so understanding that really makes more sense when you're talking about graduating early. And I'm using those quotations because we're graduating earlier than the public school system. That doesn't mean that every child that graduates early is some kind of genius or Einstein. It just means that their school year was a little more compact, and their lessons were the most necessary ones, and there was not a lot of wasted time or busy work. So let me give you the specifics on how we did early graduation. As I said, I have 5 kids. I think I said that. And 2 of them are grown. And so this son that graduated early is my third. They've always been homeschooled their whole lives. And so this is the only kind of education we've ever done. And my son asked me when he was about 12 years old if he could graduate early. And I said, yes, you may. And I gave him the list of what he needed to know to graduate. And so it wasn't that we skipped subjects or skipped grade levels, because remember, that is a public school thinking. We don't skip and we don't do grade levels. We do levels. We do courses. We talk about what a person needs to know to be an adult in this world. And so I'm not producing high school graduates. The graduation is not the goal. An adult is the goal. A functioning member of society is the goal. And so when you just, it's really hard to let go of the public education model in your head, but I really want you to try to do that. And then you will see how freeing this actually is. So at about 12, he asked to graduate early. And I said, yes, you will have to complete this list of requirements to do so. And I just want to note that we are in Texas and there are no specific graduation requirements. In fact, homeschooling is very free. So we don't report to any government entity. We don't report to anyone. The parents call the shots. We make all the decisions about curriculum. We pay for it. And we decide when our child is finished. This is scary to a lot of people, but I'm telling you, this is freedom. This is what real freedom is. And so also, there are no graduation requirements in the state of Texas because I looked. So even public schools don't have an actual set requirement. They have guidelines. And so I did look at those guidelines. I did for my older two and I did for my son. And many of them do make sense because you do want your children educated in English and grammar and science and history and math. And so there's nothing wrong with looking at those guidelines to say, okay, what is it that I need to teach my child? But that's not where you stop. And so there's usually two different pathways for a high schooler. There's college and there's not college. And I know that sounds simple, but your choices, that's basically what your two choices are. And not college incorporates everything else. But your path is going to look a little different if you go to college versus not going to college. So if you have a student who wants to attend college, then you will need some things on their transcript that will help them to get into the college of their choice and might possibly even help them earn scholarships. So when planning the high school transcript, first of all, consider what do they want to do. And if you have a child going to college, start searching out the degree plan that they want and then study what is required for that degree plan. Even different college students are going to go in with different needs. And so check with some of the universities or local junior colleges that you're interested in and start talking to their admissions counselors now and ask, if my child wants this degree, what do we need to have on the high school transcript? If they want this other degree, what do they need? If they want to do dual credit, where do we start? So that way you have your path lined out. But please don't stop there. Don't just make your transcript a checklist that impresses colleges and impresses everyone you know. This is not about this piece of paper. It's not about the transcript, and it's not about the diploma. Keep in mind, you are raising a future adult. You are sending a future person out into the world to influence the world for good or for bad, to work in the public, to interact with the public, to get married and have a family and have children. So let's talk about the whole person. So with my son in particular, I had several requirements, which were certain courses in English and grammar and writing. I wanted him to be well educated in how to communicate. And he's kind of an extrovert, so he doesn't have a lot of problem with that, but I still wanted to help sharpen his skills for communication, whether it's written or verbal. I want him to be able to spell. I want him to be able to put together a coherent sentence or a paper. And learning to write a paper also prepares you for making a good speech. And so these are important to me. I don't worry about how many English credits he has. What I'm concerned with are these important things that he needs to learn. And I forgot to mention my son is choosing not to go to college, and so our path is definitely open to what his needs are and not what a college is looking for. Obviously, mathematics is very important, so I decided what math he needed. And besides the basics in math, I also made sure that he took the Dave Ramsey Foundation's course for teenagers. And so that's not just mathematics, that's kind of real-world finance. Another one that I recommend is the Stewardship Program by Matthew C. And then I wanted him to have science. So he's taken 3 different sciences for high school, not because someone told me he needed 3 sciences, but because I wanted him to understand God's world and understand how different things work in the animal kingdom and with chemistry and different things like that. Not because someone said so, but because I think they're important. I want him to be well-rounded and well-informed. Obviously, history is very important. And if you followed me for even one day, you probably see that that's one of my favorite things to talk about. And so I didn't give him a geography course and a world history course and an American course. We do chronological history starting at the beginning, work our way through, and then go back and do it again. And so what his transcript has on it is American history and world history and geography, because we do them all together. If you want to know more about how we do that, I encourage you to look at my website and look for my blog post, Why I Love Mystery of History. And it will explain how all the histories and the geographies are combined in a way that actually makes sense to a student. So no, his transcript doesn't say he had geography, but he did, if that makes sense. And so then the other things that I needed to think about was, okay, we've got the school subjects that make a well-rounded, well-educated person, but I want to go further. And for our family, apologetics is very important. And so he took a course from Answers in Genesis in apologetics, and they have lots of them online, so I encourage you to go look for those. Because I don't want to just send out someone who's read all the science books and knows how to make a sentence and can do math. I want someone who can articulate why he believes in God and be able to tell others. Because if you haven't noticed, in our day and age, this is extremely important. The Christian faith is being attacked from every side, and we cannot, in good faith, send our adults into the world without preparing them to know and defend the scriptures. And so I think apologetics is key. And there may be universities that don't care if your child took it. That's not the point. You are preparing your young adults to go out into the world you have a short time to prepare them for a very long time. So let's hone in on what's really important. Another thing that my son took is a logic course. Very important. All you have to do is talk to people in public or on the internet to see that logic is very under-taught right now. And so that's obviously something that would probably look good on the transcript at college, but I don't care about that. What I want is my son to think logically. I want him to be an adult who can think things through and spot errors in reasoning and not make those same errors. And then, of course, there's so many practical things in life that you don't have time for if your children are worried about filling in all these little transcript boxes. And so what I call this is just relationship homeschooling. Talking to your kids and having discussions, because you teach them all of the school subjects, but then it's in discussions that they learn to apply these things into their real world. And so at the dinner table or in the car or after church when they've heard a sermon, that's when they start applying all these things that you're giving them into real life. And so my son had all of the subjects that I mentioned. He also took guitar lessons. He's taken voice lessons online. And so that is kind of what his transcript looks like. I don't have volunteer hours on it. I guess if he was going to college, I might put those on there, but he has volunteered. Not because I wanted it on his transcript, but because I wanted him to serve. And so he's helped serve in many different ways. And we made time for that. So you're probably asking now, how did we do it by 16? Well, if you take out a lot of the busy work and you focus on what's important and you don't worry about school calendars and you're always learning, then this can happen sooner. So I didn't necessarily need my son to wait until 11th grade to take a course in government. If you're counting years, he didn't do 11th grade because he finished at 16, which was for him would have roughly been 10th grade. So he didn't need to wait for a certain grade level to take government. Also, his logic course was recommended for 11th and 12th grade. We didn't wait for 11th and 12th grade. We don't need to. If he's going to learn the topic, he learns it when he's ready. I think his biology course was in 7th or 8th grade. So just because the public school system and the entire world calls biology a high school course, you don't have to wait until high school to do it. So thinking outside of grade levels is a big help here, because then you don't have to think, well, he can't do that until this age or this grade. Says who? That's what I want you to think about. Who came up with this idea and why? Why does that matter? So let them start early. It doesn't take 12 years of math. It doesn't take 12 years of grammar. You don't need 12 years of grammar instruction. Start late and hone in on the specifics and make sure they know it. You don't need to be practicing participles and punctuation for 12 long years. It's just ridiculous. But we've got a government-run school system that runs everything the way they run all other government systems, and it's not efficient and it's not time-saving. So think about the other things that you may have felt like, well, this is how you do it. Think about why. Why do we do it that way? Is it because the curriculum sells it this way? Is it because this is what I've only known? And ask yourself if it's necessary. Do you need 12 years of math? No, actually you don't. You can condense those years of math instruction into 8 or 10. I have a blog post on delaying math instruction when the kids are younger, because you can start them in kindergarten learning all the math subjects, or you can wait a couple more years and they learn it faster. It's a condensed course. And so I will say the homeschool curriculum companies have mostly copied the public school system. And so when you buy curriculum, you'll see, well, this is the third grade math, so I guess we have to do the third grade math. I'm not going to tell you to switch curriculum, but I'm going to tell you to think that through. And if you love the curriculum you're using, but you'd like to think outside the box, go over the lessons with your children. And if they've conquered something, let them skip a couple pages and move on to the next content or the next concept. Don't drill to death when it's not necessary. If they've got a concept, move on. If you're ready to change curriculum, look for curriculum that does not actually have grade levels on it, but just has levels. A lot of companies are doing this more now because they understand how homeschooling works. We use MathUC for our math. There are no grade levels on MathUC. There are just math levels. And you can go on their website and have your child take an online test to see which level they need to start with. And so if my child finishes the division book when he's 10 or when he's 15, that's okay. We're going to go right on to the next book and the next book. So it's very freeing to let go of grade levels. And if you can make this work with your curriculum, do it. Be the teacher. Be in charge. Another thing that you don't have to do 12 years of is history or science. Really, if you think about every school subject there's no need for all of these to happen in every grade level. So ask what the kids need to know and teach it to them, whatever age they are. If they're ready for a government course, you don't have to wait until 12th grade to teach them. Let them understand how American government works when they're 14. Same thing with everything else. If they've mastered writing a sentence and writing a paper and their spelling is good and they can speak coherently, maybe you don't need any more grammar curriculum. Or maybe you don't need a writing curriculum. If they haven't mastered those things, go ahead and do them. But don't worry about the fact that they already did it last year. Make it your priority to master the subject and not worry about being behind someone's arbitrary timeline. I hope this is making sense to you. I hope you're seeing that if you let go of grade levels and if you let go of the K-12 public education system, the entire design in your mind, and you pretend like you never heard of it, then just sit down and think about, what does a person need to be educated? You can use your curriculum as a guide for that. You can think about how public school works, but that's a trap that we fall into that makes us stressed out, feeling like we're behind, comparing ourselves and our kids to other people. And instead of just learning, we're caught up in lists and checking off the lists and accomplishments and tests and things like that. And so letting go of that mindset was what helped my son to be able to accomplish his to-do list for graduation. And that's basically what it was. I kind of created a blank transcript with everything that he needed to have on the final transcript. And I said, this will be your guide. And so we just checked off each one as it was done, not by grade, but by course. And so there were a couple times when he asked for something different, like, I'd like to learn Japanese. So we tested a Japanese program online for a few weeks, and then he said, I don't like this. So we let it go. He doesn't have to have a foreign language because we are not bound by the world standards. A foreign language is awesome, but it's not necessary. So I hope you're not shocked by that, but you don't have to have a foreign language to graduate from high school. I never had a foreign language. Never. I'm 50 years old. It's okay. It's okay to not do geometry. It's okay to not write a research paper. There are many things that we do that we think, oh my gosh, that we have to do this because that's what people do. So I want you to ask yourself why, and is this relevant to my student? Some of your kids need to write a research paper. Some of them need to do geometry and even higher levels of math. It's okay to do those things, but it's also okay not to. You need to do what your child needs. Let your child be an individual, and that's exactly how an early high school graduation works. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment, and I will see if I can explain it further. And on my website, if you just go to the front page, NickiTruesdale.com, there's a search bar at the top. Type in high school, and there are several articles on homeschooling high school where I do talk about transcripts and graduation. I talk about planning the high school years. And like I said, you can do that at any age. You don't have to wait until they're almost 14 to do it. And I talk about the importance of relationship and why I believe that high school at home is vital for your Christian kids. Thank you for listening. Please visit my website, NickiTruesdale.com, and I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you.